To be back. It's been about 5 years since we were here last time, and we don't get this way very often, and this thing doesn't work so well, like an Etch-a-Sketch. When we go back in 3 weeks, we'll be entering that, what do you call it? Help me out. Empty nest. I couldn't think of it. Yeah, empty nest. We're leaving Brianna here. I hate it it's worked out this way, but we'll only be here tonight. We've got to get back to help Brianna get settled. And she, when we go back, we still don't have a permanent place for her. She has started working as a nursing assistant in a nursing home. This week her schedule is for 56 hours, and it doesn't look like it's going to slow down any. And she loves it. She is a nurturer. She loves it, and it's God is blessing. Sam, our son, is in a junior at Bob Jones studying how to make money, finance, and I wish him all the best because we're going to need some help later on. No, it is a blessing to be here. We thank you so much. When you guys moved up here way back when, there was a number of missionaries that, as I get a little informal sometimes. I'm from Oklahoma, sorry. Pastor Bailey, and you guys, whoever was here then, took some missionaries with you, and we were one of them. And it's an absolute blessing. We've loved every minute of it, and the times that we've been able to be here. It's a blessing to see your new church going in next door, and that's great. We've been in Romania 26 years, not in the same place, and it's not the same place that it used to be. We have a connection, though you don't realize it. I'll get there in just a minute. Don't let me forget. Early on in the early 90s, people came in, great evangelistic meetings, handing out thousands and thousands of Bibles. But there's a little bit different over there in Eastern Europe, because many of those Bibles the next day were appearing on the market for sale. And then the guys that were doing that would go to the same evangelistic meeting the next night and get another Bible and go and do the same thing. Nonetheless, there were some serious decisions made. We are currently in the city of Hunedoara in Living Hope Independent Baptist Church. And it's a small group. On the back table back there, there's a picture of a group. That's a Christmas service, and normally there are larger attendance when we get some visitors that come. We run about half that, between 15 to 20 people. We always have 100% attendance of our members. If they're in town, if they're not, don't have something that stops them, like having a worker in their house or in their apartment renovating, something like that. If they are in town, they come. The reason for that is we are a family. We are the spiritual family. Every member in our church, except for me, is a first-generation Christian. That includes my wife. Every member in our church, except for me and one other, is still the only believer in their family. Romania is very different. It used to be, it still is a poor country, but when prosperity came the way it is today, things just changed. A quick update on the building fund, and then I'll say something about Faith Promise related to Brother Jim here. I spoke with Mihai this afternoon. He looked at another building. Let me back up. We've been trying to raise funds for a building to have our own place. The picture that's back there is a place that we've been renting for 9 years, and we need to get into our own place. It would be similar, but it's on steroids. The attitude that people have here in America, if you see a church trying to start up in a storefront, what's it look like? It kind of looks like a sect. It looks like a cult type thing. You're not too sure what it's about. The secular world's going to look at that thing kind of, I don't know about that or not. It's much more exaggerated over there. And the Lord is blessed anyhow. But he went and saw a place today that is excellently located. The building is quite right. Actually, there's 2 buildings on the land. It's a house that can easily be modified. The owner, we currently have 102,000 euros. The owner is asking 135,000 euros, but he immediately dropped it to 125. And possibly he would drop it down to 120. So we're praying about that. It's probable that Pastor Mihai and a couple of the other men in the church will go and look at it again before I get there. And I've seen enough of it to know, what the general layout is. and most likely I will stay out of sight through all the negotiations, because the minute an American shows up, you know what happens to the price. So, but we're thankful for that, and we're just waiting to see how the Lord will lead on that. Faith Promise. We've been practicing Faith Promise for a good number of years. One of the projects we did several years ago was this project, distributing Bibles over there. People got excited. A church gave about $500. That may not sound like a lot, but when you consider that, well, it's a lot. This year, I have an acquaintance, I should say. It'd be pretentious to say a friend. I don't know him that well. But he's a missionary in Nepal. And we've been talking with him, and he's just got back to Nepal from furlough, and when I get back, we'll strike up the discussion again. Our church is looking at supporting a Nepalese, that's how you say it, pastor over there. And I won't say his name. I don't know if this goes out on the internet or not, but anyhow. We're a monthly support, which would be a good monthly salary in that country over there. So we're excited about that. Our people are faithful. Our people are growing. They're giving sacrificially. They pay a price for what they believe and standing for the Lord. And I don't have a presentation. It's not because I didn't prepare one. I didn't pay for one. It's that the guy that put it together decided he didn't have time to do it. And by the time it got down to it, I didn't have time to do anything else. So try and paint a picture. You can see some pictures back there, but I'll try and paint a picture spiritually of what our church. And I hope it succeeds. I pray that the Spirit will speak this evening through these three simple testimonies. Mariwata. Mariwata, that's a female name. I say it's a derivative of Maria. It's not exactly. It's a different name. But anyhow, she's 62 years old. She was widowed at the age of 39. She was saved through the ministry, through the testimony of a lady named Moldovianu. If you're Romanian, you hear that name, you know exactly who I'm talking about. Not so much for her sake, but her brother's sake, Nicolae Moldovianu. Brother Moldovianu, spent 12 years in prison for the crime of writing Christian hymns. In the 1950s and the 1960s, he was in prison. I had the privilege on 2 different occasions to spend several hours with him in his home in the town of Sibiu, which is about an hour away from where we are now. We took some teens up there years ago from Stuka and just listened to him talk. Sam and Brianna were 5 years old, I believe, at the time. We were there for 4 hours, and they never stirred. There was something captivating about him, and we kind of understand what that is, I believe, as he told the stories of his time in prison and how God blessed, how he wrote and memorized 250 hymns while he was in prison. And when he got out of prison, he wrote them down. As he wrote them down, he would forget them. He could no longer recall them like that. I'm saying all this, kind of got sidetracked there. His sister used to live in Hunedoara. And Mariwata, about 13, 14 years ago, was living there in Hunedoara as well. And she met her, and I don't know exactly how the relationship started, but she was saved under the testimony of Nicolae Moldovianu's sister. She went to Spain, worked for 10 years, and a lot of Romanians, tens of thousands of Romanians go to the West to work. She was there for about 10 years. There was an accident. She broke her leg or ankle. She could not continue to work. She came back to Romania, and she'd always desired to be baptized in her own country. That's a problem. You know, she should have been baptized long before that, but as it turned out, it was probably best that she wasn't. As she was tending to go to a Pentecostal church, which is very common. And when she came back, she found Mrs. Moldovianu again and asked her if she had any ideas or recommendations where to go to church. Mrs. Moldovianu had visited our church one time. And when Mariwata came back, she said, there's only one church here to go to, and that's that little independent Baptist church. And now, I'm bragging. I'm very pleased that we had that kind of testimony. It also tells us something about Moldovianos, because, just to interject this, sometimes people ask where our opposition comes from. Our primary source of opposition are the Baptists in Romania, the Baptist Union. And serious people like the Moldovianos recognize that. When Mariwata came, she started attending. It took about a year for her to understand what baptism is, what it isn't. We baptized her, and there's a picture of her baptism back there in the upper right-hand corner, I believe, if I can see it from here. And then her family didn't like it, let's put it that way. They weren't excessively cruel to her, but they basically declared verbally, you don't really have anything to do with this anymore. Go back to your repenter friends. And she still has contact with them, and until last spring, she always held some sort of hope, beyond hope, that maybe somehow within the Orthodox religion, her family understood enough to truly be saved until last Easter. Last Easter, she was out there at the service. They're doing all their ritual stuff and whatnot. And sometime in that process, or maybe just before the service, a family in the village had purchased a very costly robe of some sort of ornament that they presented to the priest to wear to exalt himself. And he declared from their pulpit or whatever they have that family had now earned salvation. When Mariwata heard that, then she understood. She's a faithful attendee. Never was remarried after her husband died. Has some kids in other countries. She has a daughter, Daria, who lives in a granddaughter in Vienna, who spent some summers with us. Has attended church there for 2 summers in a row now, I believe. Precious little girl. We're praying for her salvation. Livia. Livia's about 67. She returned to Romania from Italy with the goal, the intention of divorcing her husband. Her husband's name was Mircea. Mircea had been attending our church for about 6 months or so before she came back. He was under conviction to the point, our church, if you see it back there, there's no really dimension to get an idea of it where we're meeting, but this platform is, square footage is bigger than or about the size of our meeting room. Close enough that you can see him, and when we would preach, there would be tears in his eyes. I had a special affinity for him because just physically, he looked like he could be my uncle. He looked very much like my Uncle Don, and there's just a connection there. When Livia came back from Italy, and they started the divorce process, she was invited to come to our church by Teresia. We've mentioned these names many times in our prayer letters. Teresia is pictured back there in the upper center photo. She's 80 years old. She's unsaved. She's got the red hair like they like to dye over there. But somehow she invited Livia to come, and she started coming. And when she started coming, it was awkward. Mircea stopped. Now when we meet him on the street, he will, if at all possible, he'll avoid us. I've seen him at a distance of maybe 20, 30, 40 yards, and you can tell at that distance when somebody sees you, and then they pretend that they don't see you, and then they take a different direction so they're not to pass you on the sidewalk. And when he's forced to greet us, it's a little awkward, but we're still praying for him. But Livia was coming. At the time, she was about 62, 63 years old. She came for, I don't remember how many months, a good number of months, 6 or 7 months or so. Then one Sunday morning she came, a little more chipper than normal, and she said, I think I just got saved. I said, what do you mean? I said, well, you guys have been teaching this, and this is from the Bible and all that. I said, and that's just what I prayed. I said, well, yeah, I think you did get saved. She was saved. She was baptized. As we prepared for this furlough, she's now 67. Lynn and Brianna have been our Sunday school teachers for the girls. Now, we only have 2 all the time, regularly that come, but others come on occasion. And Olivia and this, it's kind of hard to say about a dear lady that's 67 years old, but they're so cute. When she comes up and kind of, did I learn to teach the girls? She asked that of Brianna, who at the time was like 19. I said, well, give me a second to think about that. Yes, of course you can. So she began to come, and I think there's a picture back there, if I can't see it, or somewhere back there anyhow, of her teaching those 2 little girls. She just loves it. She comes, we have prayer time. It used to be every day of the week. Now it's Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We meet specifically for prayer. Thursday is our midweek service. Friday we take off. Saturday we meet for prayer and building cleaning, and then Sunday, of course. She comes so many times with questions, good questions. She loves to go to the park, hand out tracts. And sometimes she's a little bit, we have a word, smekker, which means kind of crafty, sly. She'll put a tract on a bench, park bench, and then back off a little bit and just wait. She's laid the bait, now she's waiting. So if somebody takes the bait, she'll very kindly move over and start talking and talk to them. Other times, getting into apartments to put tracts in mailboxes is a little bit tough because they all got the stairwell doors are locked. By the way, we can't do that. Mailboxes are not federal property. They're the property of the house, and we do that all the time. Livia makes going to church worthwhile. She's the only believer in her family. And there's Donna and Florine. You've seen her name written. It looks like Dana. 32 and 30, respective. This is the first complete family in Hunadara. Florine, amazingly enough, this is absolutely amazing, Brother Jim. I can't give you the time frame. 8, 9 years ago, somebody handed him a Bible, and he read it, and he got saved, just like what you're doing in Papua New Guinea. All by himself, he got saved. Well, not by himself. I think the Holy Spirit had something to do with it. But he got saved, and he was already married to Donna. She was raised Pentecostal, and that was a mess. And Utsur and Roxana Dudash, other younger co-workers, came, moved to town. They ended up in the same apartment block right next door to the Vlases. And when Florine struck up a conversation with Utsur and found out that he's going to church and what's going on, he came, and he never stopped coming. And Donna hated that. She despised that. Part of the reason is that we teach that the husband is the leader of the family. In the Pentecostal movement, that's not the case. The woman runs the family. They run the church as well from behind, but they definitely run it. Early on, Florine tried to get her to come some. She would resist. There was a Christmas time that she came early on, and the girls were young, about like 2 and 3 years old. She'd gotten them some food, and Lynn and I were sitting at the end of the table, and she set the girls close to us, and we told her, go ahead and go get yourself something to eat. She said, we'll look after the girls while you fix yourself a plate. And she said, no, I only eat with family and friends. Thank you very much. I like you too. I didn't say that. I probably thought it, but I didn't say that. Her hatred grew so much so that a year or two later, we were doing some special discipleship meetings on Saturday evenings, and Florine was coming. She despised us even more for that. She took the girls over to her mom's, which is an apartment just across the street. And when her mom saw her face, she said, Donna, what are you going to do? She said, never mind, Mom, just take care of the girls. And she left. Her intention was to come to the church, which is pictured back there, and break out every window. Now, in Romania, we have double pane windows. It's thermal pane windows. You have 2 panes. If you break the outside window, that's vandalism. If you break the inside window also, whether you enter or not, that's called breaking and entering, and that is prison time. She went with that intention. In this town, we're 60,000 people, but it's not like here in America. 60,000 people within 1 square mile, basically, mostly apartment blocks. One main street, one clear main street in the town. She couldn't find the building. She walked for 2 hours looking for our building. She'd been there before, but she suddenly couldn't find it. And we know why now. In fact, we didn't even know about that till this past summer. Then came November 2017. She's out walking her daughters. It's a little bit nicer day in the break in the cooler weather. And as she gets to the end of the street and turns around and comes back, and it's all very inner city type, but that is right on the edge of town. And out on the edges of town is not the best place to be. Neither is the center of town after dark. But anyhow, she sees a man walking towards her. He's homeless. He's got multiple layers of clothes on. He hasn't been bathed in years, literally years. And he, as he's walking towards her, he makes eye contact with her, and he won't stop looking at her. And she gets nervous. I mean, she looks at him, she looks away. She draws her daughter closer together. Looks at him again. He's still staring at her. As they pass, he raises his hand, points in her face, and says, "Tu eres lui Satan." You belong to Satan. Never had seen him since, never had seen him beforehand. That began 4 months of absolute terror. She began to have nightmares, could not sleep at night, screaming, crying at night, keeping her husband up all night long, calling Pastor Mihai and speaking with him, and just praying, and night after night after night. I felt so sorry for Florin. We'd see him come to church, and he would be totally exhausted. He could not stay awake. And, of course, nobody said anything about it. We understood what was going on until February of 2018. Donna got home after her shift at work. I don't know which shift it was. They work a rotating shift all the way around. She got off at work. The girls are still at mom's, her mom's. Florin is still not home yet. She stopped off the bus, looked around, and said, "I'm tired of this. I don't want to live anymore." And when she said that, when that thought came to her, it scared her. There's a good scare. She began to ask questions of her husband a little bit more. She began to think. Shortly sometime after that, she got off the bus, got into her apartment. And you have to understand these apartments are cold concrete. It's just concrete. And it echoes. There's nothing fancy about it. It's just stacked blocks. She gets in her apartment after her shift. She begins to pray. She prays out loud. But it's not just out loud. She's hollering. She's screaming, not at God, but to God. And everybody in the apartment block hears this echo going up and down the stairwell. And some of the one family that heard that echo has visited our church a number of times. His name is Andre, his wife Adriana. She got saved. She surrendered her life. She went out of the apartment, and I think immediately, if I've got the chronology right, Adriana, at least, was outside the apartment and said, "What was going on in there? You and Florin having a fight?" She said, "No, Florin's not even here." "What was going on?" I said, "Well, I just got saved. I just gave my life to Jesus." "What's that mean?" "I don't know. You got to come to church and find out." She went to work the next day. People saw her. And she didn't have to say anything. They came up asking, "What happened to you?" "I gave my life to God." "What does that mean?" "I don't know. I just got saved. You forgive me my sin," and something like that. She didn't know how to explain it, but she knew what happened. Now, it took about a year and a half to get her past some of her Pentecostal background and having been baptized at the age of 18. To get to the point where she understood that baptism does not seal your salvation, is not part of completing your salvation, has nothing to do with it. And they have to get past that. Beyond that, in our culture, when you are baptized, that is the final cut. You are now officially, formally, and maybe completely separated from your family. There have been people who have been so cut off from their family that literally the family held funerals, had held an actual funeral for what they considered dead person, been cut off. Twice since we've been here in the States on this furlough, when pastors introduced me, this just happened the first few weeks. They talked about how difficult Romania is and what a disappointment it has been. Because when we went into Romania back in the 90s, we had some great expectations, great thoughts, and it didn't really pan out that way. And, we don't have the great numbers, and I wish we could go in and hand out Bibles in the schools there. I wish we could do that. I've been in a school one time doing something like that. We couldn't actually hand out Bibles, but a friend of mine was doing some relief stuff, and we went in and tried that. Unfortunately, the lady teacher that let us in, while we were there, I don't remember the exact relationship, but I believe it was her mother walked in. Her mother's husband was a priest. And that's the last time we ever got into a school. They don't allow that kind of stuff over there. But with the things that we've seen, put one question to you, and then we've got just a few minutes for questions. What is the value of a soul? Jeremiah, and I believe it's chapter 5, was told by God, you're going to preach and no one's going to listen to you. Noah preached for hundreds of years, 7 converts. That's it. You go to a place like Romania or Papua New Guinea, and different places of the world, you don't compare. Please don't ever try to make comparisons between these places. We are Europe. It is a European country. The materialism is over the top. Other places, South America, Mexico, Philippines, China even, as much as you can get into China and what you can do there. Papua New Guinea especially. We have some friends that used to be there. I don't know if you know Dan Peters or not, but those are open places. It's just different places, and each missionary is called to his own location. What's the value of a soul? When we adopted Sam in Romania, Sam and Brianna over there, another lady missionary said, in all sincerity, there's nothing negative about it. She said, if nothing else would ever happen in your ministry, but to get Sam and Brianna out of the orphanage, they work with orphanages, so they understood it. If that's all you ever did, it's worth it. As I prepared some other messages for this furlough, I started writing down some names. If the only one that was ever saved was Lydia Iliescu, she had been the only one that had been worth it. If Matika had been the only one, you may remember his story. He attempted suicide. He did not succeed. Lynn invited him to church. He came to church. He got saved. And a year later, on the anniversary of his attempted suicide, we baptized him in the river. If he had been the only one ever saved, would a lifetime of service be worth it? The answer is yes. It's not theoretical. It's yes. He's in heaven today. He died about 3 years ago from all the poisons and stuff when he would making shoes and stuff. It ate him up from the inside out. You guys have been praying for us, and we've had email communication with some of you. It's a blessing. It's a blessing to have faithful churches. It's a blessing to have churches that aren't following some of the new popular moves that we've seen. If you want a shock, leave the country for 5 years and then come back. I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for your prayers, support, your prayers, and again for your prayers. If you got a question, we got several minutes. I don't have to be anywhere until tomorrow morning about 8 o'clock when we have to hit the road. Yes, sir. Yeah. We started the building project a couple years ago because, like I said, we need to get out of that context. It just, we look temporary, and we're so visible. We have a bar that lives that is next door. If you come to visit our church, everybody knows it. And not that we want to try and hide or anything like that, but there's a lot of pressure on the unsaved to be associated and coming to our church. And we have seen people stop coming specifically for that reason. So we're looking at buying a building, and we looked at a place, and I put a video out on it in a big red square thing. The problem with that we kind of backed off of it, initially it was 160,000 euros. It came down to 130,000 euros. But the problem with that is the only land you get with it is the land that's underneath the building. We're right up against a 12-story apartment block, and it's just not a good situation. So we found another one, and I really liked it. In spite of the fact that it did not have any bathrooms, it didn't have any kitchen, didn't have any plumbing except that which was under the floor. The guy that had bought it began to renovate. He got tired of it and wanted to get rid of it. We came to an agreement on a price of 75,000 euros. We had the cash, and we set up a date we almost had the cash. We had to wait about 5 days for it to be transferred because I had the rest of it here in the States. And in the meantime, I think he used us as leverage against somebody else. They offered him 85,000 euros. He signed with them or did something with them. They gave him a deposit, and then so far the building just sat there and nothing happened. Because I go drive by it every now and then just to see. We found another building. 85,000 euros, I believe it was. We had the cash at that time. But we're getting ready to go to a pastor's conference. And we said, okay, that was on a Thursday. Friday, there was not enough time to get anything done. He said, next Wednesday when we come back, we'll meet. and we'll do the paperwork. We were gone over the weekend. On Wednesday, as we were driving back, Pastor Mihai called him on the phone as I was driving, and I could tell very quickly something happened. Somebody else had come in and gave him the exact same amount. And on Monday, he signed with them and sold the building. And that building is actually on the street that I live on. So I drive by it often and see it did actually sell. So that's where we are now. And we've got this other place. It looks good. It's about the building. There's two buildings, two little houses, so to speak. One is about 1,700 square feet. The land, you can do the calculations. I forget the number. It's 640 square meters. There's plenty of room to expand. Mihai was there today. The front two rooms on the street side, the entrance into the buildings from the sides. The front two rooms have a solid wall between them, but it used to be an open wall, big doorway, which means it's not a structural wall, which means we can take it down and double our capacity that we have right now. Plus, we've got room to go, and it's an excellent location. It really is. 125,000 euros now. I can get him down to 120, but we'll see. And we have 100, in euros, we have 102 right now, so that's where we stand. Yes, sir. Where's my calculator? The 135,000 euros I know was $148,000. So let me do some calculating real quick here. 130, yeah. But the price came down from that, 20,000. I lost it here, 10,000 euros. I believe the exchange rate, I meant to look it up before I left this evening. It was about $1. 1 euro will cost you 1.14 euros. Now, 1 euro will cost $1.14. Okay, so yeah, you can see that math was not my strong point. So just doing this roughly 1.4. I'm right. We're looking at about $143,000. And in dollars, we have $114,000. So, dollars. I know I'm confusing you. That's okay. I'm stay confused most of the time. I got 28.5, something like that. Just okay. Yeah. Wonderful. Yeah. Now you can see why Sam's going into finance and not me. So anyhow, we've never stressed out about it. The Lord will take care of it in His time. We're just waiting and praying, and kind of hoping, and working. So, anything else? Yes, sir. Visa. We have relatively permanent visas. We have permission de Sehested. Which means we have a visa that every 5 years we just go in and do the paperwork, and it just renews, and without any application as such. Just to go in and say, okay, your name is still the same, you're still living in the same place, you still got the same phone number, all that stuff. Fill it out. We get a new little card. I don't have it on me. I've got it in my briefcase. And we've been there long enough that actually years ago we could have qualified for an absolute permanent visa. Not citizenship, but like a permanent visa. To meet that, though, we have to be in the country a certain period of time and never leave during that period of time. We were never able to do that with various reasons, furloughs and other issues. But so, we're set. There's no problem. If you come to visit, you've got 90 days to come in and do what you want to do and leave. If you're there 91 days, you're going to have a lot of trouble at the what do you call it, VAMA, customs, passport control. They're not going to like it. You're going to pay a hefty fine. For that we're set, as long as you want to stay, or until they change the laws. Anything else? Well, it's 8:04, so you get home at a reasonable time. Thank you so much, folks. praying for us, supporting us, thinking about us. Notes of encouragement every now and then. I can say this here, I can't say it everywhere. Thank you for staying faithful, not seeking the things of the world, not seeking to please men, but maintaining a church that seeks to please God. Thank you, Pastor.
All right, thank you, brother. I'm going to have our ushers to come, and the last thing we're going to do tonight is we're going to take our offering. Of course, the offering tonight, again, will go toward our missionaries for our conference. Our conference expenses are taken care of. We budget for that. But we want to be a blessing to these missionaries and help them along their way. And we, of course, are taking care of their expenses separately from this as well. So we just want to really help meet their needs, whether they be on deputation or whether they got extra expenses from furlough. You know, bills still have to be paid, and we want to be a blessing to them tonight. So we'll have opportunity to take the offering, and then, of course, if you have your faith promise card and you've got that, you can drop that in as well, the offering plate, and we'll add that up and let you know tomorrow night where we stand. As we prepare for that, Joey Potter, would you pray for us?
Heavenly Father, we do again rejoice to again hear these testimonies of what's happening on the mission fields that we support. And Father, I just pray that we'll continue to be encouraged, knowing that what you've allowed us to give is being used to win souls to Jesus Christ. In some countries many, in some countries few, but Father, they are so worth it. And we rejoice in the efforts of those here tonight and those here the other nights of the conference as they give a part of their life to minister in areas that we physically can't touch, but that we can be a part of through offerings of faith promise. Father, we pray that we would do this in a gift of love, a gift of desire to see souls won for Jesus Christ, so that one day, even though we can't see them here on earth, we'll see them in eternity with you. We pray that you bless this offering, use it in a mighty way to win souls for Jesus. We pray in his name.
Let's go ahead and stand tonight. We're going to be dismissed. Certainly appreciate your being here. Trust it was a challenge and a help to you tonight as we consider what God is doing all around the world. And let's go ahead and have a closing word of prayer and ask Mr. Ron Schwenk if he'll close us.